Madam President, on the 7th of April, the Russian Federation voted against the draft submitted by Bahrain, Jordan, Qatar, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates and the Saudi Arabia, the draft resolution of the United Nations Security Council on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and the waters adjacent to it. But first of all, we would like to recall the principled position of the Russian Federation with regard to the conflict in the Middle East. Our country condemns the aggression of the United States and Israel against Iran, which was unleashed in violation of the UN Charter and other norms of international law, and which resulted in a large number of victims, including amongst the civilians. We are committed to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all, without exception, states of the region, both Iran and the Arabian Peninsula monarchies. For this reason, we consider strikes against civilians and civilian infrastructure to be unacceptable. The leadership of our country undertook the most active efforts possible with a view to preventing them. However, some members of the Security Council prefer to turn a blind eye to the root cause of the escalation of tensions. Unfortunately, this was one of the key shortcomings of the earlier Security Council resolution number 2817. Nonetheless, Russia, understanding the concern of its partners of the GCC countries, abstained during that vote. However, in the draft Security Council resolution on maritime security in the Middle East that we are discussing today, not only was the broad context of the conflict ignored, in it the Security Council was being invited to give a green light to the use of certain protective measures under the pretext of ensuring the safety of navigation. This would have become a carte blanche for the continuation of aggressive actions and further escalation. The removal of references to Chapter 7 of the UN Charter and to the mentioning of all necessary measures did not solve this problem. In addition to this, essentially every paragraph of the draft resolution was replete with confrontational and factually incorrect elements, which is something that we spoke about in detail in the statement we made in explanation of the vote on the 7th of April. The adoption of such a document would only have created an additional pretext for aggressors who were already subjecting Iran's civilian infrastructure and civilians to massive strikes. Enshrining the possibility of using force on the basis of vague criteria, accompanied by an attempt to create the impression of Iran as the sole source of threats to international peace and security, left ample room for interpretation by some states and for legitimizing unlawful and dangerous actions. In the very recent past, we have already seen such an example, and everyone can recall what monstrous consequences the broad interpretation of Security Council Resolution 1973 on Libya, adopted in 2011, led to. The Russian Federation could not allow the Security Council to sign up to the legitimization of aggression. For this reason, throughout the entire negotiating process and up to the very last moment, we kept calling on our Arab friends to refrain from advancing this draft resolution. Unfortunately, our Bahraini colleagues and their like-minded partners nevertheless decided to bring the matter to a vote. In that situation, we had no choice but to oppose its adoption. China acted in a similar manner. The events that followed it once again confirmed that our countries, as responsible permanent members of the Security Council, took the right decision. Shortly after the vote on the 7th of April, the establishment of a ceasefire regime between the United States and Iran was announced, and on the 11th of April in Islamabad, direct talks were held between the high-level American and Iranian representatives. We are convinced that preventing short-sighted and ill-considered steps within the Security Council made it possible to safeguard the necessary condition to achieve the first, although minimal and very fragile, agreements, as well as for launching a diplomatic process for a comprehensive settlement. Madam President, the Russian Federation stands for ensuring the freedom of navigation, and not only in the Strait of Hormuz and adjacent waters, but throughout the world ocean. We consider it necessary to seek an end to attacks on the commercial fleet of any states, as well as the opening of corridors for Cuba and Venezuela. This problem must be addressed in a comprehensive manner with the participation of all interested states. We are convinced that such an approach should be fully applied to the current situation in the Middle East as well. resolving the problem of the Strait of Hormuz, aggravated by the escalatory steps of the American leadership to block maritime communication with Iranian ports, is impossible without eliminating the root causes of the current crisis and without taking into account the opinion of Tehran. At the same time, understanding the concerns of our Arab friends and Russia, jointly with China, put forward an alternative draft Security Council resolution on the current situation in the Middle East, including in the context of maritime security. This draft is framed in a concise and balanced manner and is aimed at facilitating the search for a negotiated solution, which is currently being pursued with the assistance of a number of countries, including Pakistan. The document is currently in blue at the Security Council table. We believe that at the present moment, the Council should focus precisely on such objective initiatives that are consistent with its mandate to maintain international peace and security, and we count on the support of all members of the Security Council. I thank you.